Hello and welcome to the David Trailer 2020 pollinator lesson. We are going to talk about bees, and I am showing you right now my honeybees. My honeybees are in a top bar hive, and if you look closely you're going to see that they felt like they needed to build on the outside of the box. It looks real crusty, but you can see actually the starts of wax comb built on the outside, and it was because it was overpopulated and they were bearding on the outside, and as they bearded on the outside they felt like, hey, let's just build comb out here. So I am going to be talking to you about our pollinators, the bee world, and my honeybees in general. On the top of my box you see a book called Bees Are the Best. It's written by Johnny Van Orman and Dr. Joseph Wilson, and they are very talented people. Johnny Van Orman is an animator, and Joseph Wilson is actually a bee specialist out on the west, and he's very knowledgeable. So Bees Are the Best is a wonderful book, and hopefully we can talk about it. If not, maybe you can get it and read it. So let's get started. I'm Britt Hopper, or Bee Hopper, however you want to see it. I'm going to sit right here by my bees and see how well they like this. So anyway, I'm going to take you through my pictures. Right here I have the picture of the sunflower. It's the Kansas State flower, and along with the Kansas State flower is a honeybee on it. The honeybee is not native to Kansas, but yet it's the Kansas State insect. And because it's the Kansas State insect, I thought it was a really neat photograph to use here to show a honeybee pollinating a sunflower. Pollination is done by the honeybee, and it's 80% of the world's pollination is done by the honeybee. So next time you're in the grocery store and you're looking in the produce aisle, understand that every fruit or vegetable that needs to be pollinated was pollinated pretty much by the honeybee. So the honeybee is very important. Now there are other pollinators, and we're going to get into that, but there are other pollinators that are specialists, and there's generalist. The honeybee would be considered a generalist because it actually pollinates throughout the whole year. Specialists would be like the mason bee. There are mason bees that just pollinate one flower and one flower only. And so let's just say, for instance, what if that one flower was a strawberry? Well, if the mason bee died and that strawberry needed to be pollinated by that specialist mason bee, guess what you wouldn't be able to eat anymore? That's right, the strawberry. So pollination is important. Protecting our pollinators is highly important. You know, right now is troubling times. We're worried about COVID-19, a virus. But did you know that the bee and pollinators are not protected? No one's protecting them, and this COVID-19 would seem not really real, or not even worried about if people were starving to death. And in fact, there are people starving to death around the world, and we should be promoting our pollinators and feed the world. And that's my personal opinion. But this is a honeybee on the Kansas State flower, the sunflower. Without pollination, we would not have sunflower seeds or lots of other fruits and vegetables. Now a lot of people say, well, it's just our fruits and vegetables. We still have the meat department. Well, some people don't eat meat. And believe it or not, bees pollinate different grasses. Not only do they pollinate grasses, they pollinate alfalfa. They pollinate clover. And those are two crops that cows and horses and rabbits eat, even sheep. So if the bee wasn't there to pollinate those grasses, do you think we'd lose some animals in this world too? I think so. So a lot of people ask me, hey, Big Bee, how do you get bees? Well, it's funny because when I was in school, there was a poem that said, April showers bring May flowers. Well, in the month of April is when I get busy. I get real busy because this beehive will give birth to probably 7 new queens. And when that's happening, the old queen will fly away with 50% of all the bees, and the other half will stay behind to be loyal to the new queen. And so they will fly out of my hive, land on a tree, and look for a new house, a new home. It only takes a hole the size of your shirt button to move into your home, or to your folks' car, or your doghouse, or your shed. There's bees that have been found in trucks and tractors, all sorts of unique places. The bees just look for an open cavity that they can call home. If they can't find that, I've found beehives actually just built on a tree limb on the outside that's out in the rain, out in the snow, just out in the open. So bees, they're picky, but if they can't find anything, sometimes they'll just build on the outside. So I'll go looking for these swarms on trees. People will call me and say, hey, Big Bee, would you come and get this swarm off our tree? And I will. I'll come out there and get it. And so will other beekeepers. We like to take the bees and save them. Why do we save them? Well, we like to have them on our property. We like to know that food's getting pollinated for us to eat. And honey is just a symbol of a job well done. I'll go get the bees, and once I get them, I'll put them in a hive. And that hive, if they decide to call it home, they will start rubbing their wax gland, which is on their abdomen, and that'll secrete the wax, and they will build the comb. This is a picture of the comb. It takes about 24 hours for bees to build comb the size of my hand. So if you looked at this picture, here's 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days. My bees in this hive could build this picture just by rubbing their wax gland. And we're talking 4,000 to 10,000 bees working together, all building the same size shape, the same 120-degree angle of honeycomb. And they build these structures. And it's kind of funny because you can put all your classmates together and tell them to draw a square. But you know what? When you do that, you'll find out that your classmates or people in general, they don't draw the same size square, nor do they actually draw it square. So it's just really amazing that the bees can build this honeycomb perfect every time. Now there's 2 different sizes of honeycomb. One is for the worker bee, and one is for the drone bee. And so that is very important to know. What you see here, I'll turn it over. What you see here is the development of the bee. Every bee goes through egg and larvae and pupae. And once it's in pupae, it'll cocoon and it will actually develop. And you can see it develop down here. You can see the black eyes and the bee parts. And it will develop and then hatch out as a baby bee. Up here is the egg. The egg looks basically like a minus sign. It's really small. And then it turns into a larvae. The larvae looks like a croissant. Do any of you eat croissant rolls? Well, that's what a larvae looks like. And then it slowly develops into the bee parts that is the pupae stage. Honey, or the wax comb, is pure white when it's done, when it's made. But as the bee uses the wax comb, if it's for honey, the pollen will rub off onto the new wax, and you'll get the yellows out of the pollen, and so it looks golden in color. And as they go in and out, regurgitating their nectar, that will change that wax to kind of a golden look, but it's actually just the pollen and the nectar. The wax is still pretty much white. But when you see the brood area, this is the brood. The brood, every time the bee goes through these changes from egg to larvae, well, when it gets to pupae, it will cocoon or shellac the inside of the wax comb, causing it to turn brown. The more it's used, the darker brown it gets, and eventually it almost looks black. So now we have our bee that's gone through egg, larvae, and pupae, and now it's hatching out. It's hatching out, and it just eats out the capped comb of its cocoon and comes out a bee. So we've got it coming out, and it's crawling out. I guess I should turn these. And here we have our new baby bee outside on the wax comb. It looks like it's a big normal bee, but in fact it has no idea what needs to happen or what to do. Where do you go to get something to eat? Well, I'm going to show you. Inside the hive, there are worker bees that are in the first half of their life, and they're called nurse bees. Nurse bees will go to the baby bees, and what do? Well, if you can see my finger, the nurse bee will actually regurgitate. It'll throw up some nectar or pollen or even honey into the baby bee's mouth. Would anybody like to be fed like a bee? Would you like your mother or your dad to come to just vomit in your mouth? Does that sound appealing? Well, in the bee world it sounds delicious because it's either pollen or nectar, and both of those, or honey. That sounds delicious to me. I often ask kids and people, do you know the difference between a boy bee and a girl bee? Did you know that you can tell? There's a riddle I like to say, and it's this: what you see with, that's the difference. Can you tell me, in these two pictures, what you see with, that's the difference? What do you think? What's the difference between these bees? Can you tell me which bee is a boy? Can you tell me which bee is a girl? Well, the answer is, what you see with, that's the difference. If you look at this picture here, look at the eyes. In fact, I'll go to the other picture. Look at the eyes in this picture. If you have eyes that almost touch at the top of your head, you're a drone. But if you have eyes that have hair all the way around them, like these, then you're a girl. A girl bee has a smaller eye. A boy bee has a larger eye that almost touches at the top of its head. If you see a boy bee, you actually could pick up a boy bee and play with it, because boy bees don't have stingers. Only girl bees do. Only girl bees have stingers. They're the workers. They're the ones that will defend the hive because they're equipped with stingers. I told you about that poem, April showers bring May flowers. Well, this is it. You're looking at it. This is why swarms happen. What you're looking at is a queen cell. This queen cell always looks like a long planter's peanut. It's always vertical, whereas the other bees, they grow horizontal. This way. A queen bee, the queen cup, the queen cell, is always vertical, up and down. This is a queen cell. When a queen egg gets laid in a queen cup, I know in 16 days this queen is going to hatch out the new queen of the hive. So in 16 days I have to have a new hive to put the old queen in, or I might lose her as she swarms away into a tree. She might fly so far away that I might not see her and somebody else might pick her up, or she might infest somebody's house, and people don't like bees in their house Even though bees aren't damaging the house, people just don't like it. And so that's when sadness happens for me, because there are people that will choose to board up the hole. They'll choose to kill them. They'll do horrible things to the bee. And you know what? The bee, everything that it does benefits mankind 100%. Can you say that you do that in your world where you live? Everything that you do, does it benefit everybody that you see or come in contact with? Do you benefit them 100%? If it doesn't, maybe you should think about what you do. How can you change to be a better person and a more loving friend in your community to benefit everyone 100%? The honeybee, everything it does, sure, it takes care of its family. Sure, it works all day long, bringing in nectar and pollen. But everything it does through pollination benefits mankind. It benefits animals. It even improves the country or the soil or the trees that they're even involved in. It improves it all. So honeybees and pollinators are very important. Don't take them for granted and never choose to kill them. Why? Because they're doing something for you that's very beneficial. So this queen, 16 days it takes egg, larvae, pupae, and hatches out an adult. What does that queen look like? She looks like this. This is a queen bee. Her abdomen is longer. Her thorax is always black and shiny. It always looks like she's wearing her little sister's clothes because her wings are short. If you look at the bees over here, the wings are almost as long as the abdomen. But this queen, its abdomen is extra long. Now, that's important. Here, because it's like playing Where's Waldo, we have a queen bee that has a red mark on her back. We paint our queen's back sometimes to help us find her. It's important to know how old our queen is. And so there's a 9-year color code that beekeepers use to say, oh, that bee was born in 2013, or that bee was born in 2016, or that bee was born in 2020. And it's a series of paint colors that we paint her thorax that tell us the year of the queen. The queen, based on her diet, lives 3 to 5 years. You remember the worker bee and the drone bee that I showed you? Well, they only live about 45 days. That's right, 45 days. If you see a dead bee on the ground, it's probably day 46. The worker bee will actually work themselves to death. The drone bee, he doesn't do anything. He just eats honey and nectar and pollen. And right now, if you looked really close in my hive, you might start noticing that there's hardly any boy bees. What's happening? Well, in the fall, the worker bees will barricade the door in a unique way and keep the boy bees from coming in. Because since the boys don't work, they don't want them to be in there for wintertime because they're just eating food and not generating heat or helping the hive or the family live. So in fall, boy bees are usually left outside to die from hypothermia or starvation. And so in the fall and winter months, all you'll find inside a hive are girl bees. When a queen in a swarm is put in a new box, it's kind of a funny thing, but the worker bees will come outside the hive, if I've caught a swarm and put them in, and they'll stick their little bottoms up in the air. Their abdomens will stick up in the air, and they start fanning their wings. They fan their wings even when I rob honey from them. They fan them. They fan them to know, to let their family know that the queen is in here. This is our home. fly here, come here, this is your home. And so they raise their little tail up in the air to tell everybody, come home. So that's honeybees in a nutshell. What do bees do? Lots of things. Here's a pound of honey. A pound of honey is a symbol of a job well done. But you know, to get that pound of honey, my bees have visited 2 million blossoms to make that pound of honey. Next to it is pollen. Pollen is very beneficial to everyone, even the bees. What's in pollen? I'll tell you. Bee pollen contains 35% protein, 35% carbohydrate, 35% fatty oils, 15% amino acids, 35% water, and other microessentials such as vitamins A, B1, B2, B3, B5, B6, B12, vitamin C, D, E, and vitamin P, and folic acid, minerals, calcium, copper, iron, phosphorus, potassium, and sodium, plus 28 micronutrients and bioflavonoids, and 2% inclusions that are unidentified. People take vitamins all day, every day. Why not take pollen? If you had hay fever or allergies, I would want you to eat my honey or my pollen. Why? Because it alleviates the symptoms or the pain associated with your hay fever and allergies. If you had a headache, you could eat pollen and your headache would go away. If you had stomach cramps, especially the young ladies, you could eat pollen and those cramps would go away. If you would know someone that was trying to have a baby, you could tell them to eat pollen and it improves fertility. The next thing I want to talk to you about, and you probably can't see, it's in this jar. It's called propolis. If you look at the little piece of wood that I'm holding, you see some black or brown stuff here. This should be looking white. This wood should look white because it's pine. But in fact, it's a little brown box. It's coated with propolis. Why is propolis important? Well, there's a skin disease called staphylococcus. People get mouth sores, different canker sores, and propolis pretty much kills that on contact. See, propolis is coated inside the hive on everything. Propolis is an antiseptic, so it's very good on staphylococcus or the different canker sores in people's mouths. And so Mr. Tom with Tom's Toothpaste opted to make organic toothpaste using propolis. It's a smart idea because why? It's good oral health care. And so propolis improves brushing your teeth and help with sores that people might get in their mouth. So I find propolis just unbelievable. And so you see the front of the hive, how it looks kind of dark brown. You know, it should look probably gray like this right here. The reason why it's so dark looking is there's wax in propolis. Why is that important? Because every bee that lands on this hive to put honey inside, they're wiping their feet on sticky propolis. So anything on their feet, the bad chemicals for killing other bugs or even in the flour, those bad chemicals that might be on the bee's feet are methodically stuck on the propolis as they walk through the door. So I find that highly intelligent that they would coat everything with propolis to make a sterile environment. So wherever they go, their feet are clean because the propolis cleans their feet as they walk in. What's propolis made out of? Tree sap, beeswax, and pollen. Interesting. Tree sap, wax, and pollen makes it an antiseptic, which kills staphylococcus, which improves oral health care. If you had staphylococcus, if you knew a wrestler and they got staphylococcus, you could say, hey, put propolis on it. It would cure it almost instantly. Another thing. What is this? Well, it's none of your beeswax. This is beeswax that I melted out of the hive. And this is 1 pound of beeswax. Some beekeepers get upset when I say this, but it takes about 10 pounds of honey to make 2 pounds of beeswax. And they're like, oh, you can't prove that, but it takes a lot of energy to rub that wax gland to create this wax. And so I would say they probably consume a lot of nectar, a lot of honey to create that.